Hi, everyone. Okay, today we're going to talk about feedback. And so the last video was about formative assessment, where you're getting a sense of where the student is in a variety of ways and a variety of different times. This is the feedback you're giving to students to make their work better. So, or to make them better as learners. So I'm going to go through sort of what it is, what feedback is, what it isn't, the purpose of it, and then a few examples of some blended learning tools you can use to provide feedback. And then we'll go from there. Okay. And I'll share everything I'm sharing with on the screen. I'll share with you in the email that I send out. All right. So the first piece is, what is feedback? So feedback isn't advice, it's not praise, and it's not evaluation. Feedback is information about how we are doing in our effort to reach a goal. So give that a little bit of thought, because a lot of times we equate evaluation and feedback together, but it's actually, evaluation is judging the work, and feedback is something that's going to improve the work and improve the person's ability to reach the criteria for success. So feedback is specific, it's detailed, it's non-judgmental. That's an important one. So think about, I remember getting uh, red pen on a paper, that I wrote saying, you can do better than this. Well, first of all, that's not specific or detailed, and it's pretty judgmental. Like, maybe I did my very best, and it's really, that feedback is saying something about who I am as a person, as opposed to the work. So I know none of you were doing that, but just keeping in mind that the feedback is not personal, and it factually points out what aspects of proficient performance are present and which, if any, are absent. So if you think about something you've learned to do, like learning to drive, let's say, when you were learning to drive and you took driver's ed, and just a little side note, my driver's ed instructor, we called Peg Bundy because she looked literally like Peg Bundy from Married with Children. She was awesome. And she had this little parrot on a stick that she she would say, "I'm giving other drivers the bird." Anyway, Peg Bundy, I hope you're doing okay. I wish I could remember her real name. But anyway, during driver's ed, I sit behind the wheel, I hit the gas, and I start. And I've never driven before, so I'm like tentative, whatever. But Peg Bundy says to me, "You know what? You're doing great with the gas, but when you brake, you're slamming your foot on the brake. Instead, put your heel down on the bottom, like on the floor of the car, and push the brake, and then you won't." Jerk like that. So she gave me feedback. Peg Bundy gave me feedback on what I was doing well, which was the gas part and sort of hopefully steering, and some targeted, specific, non-judgmental, she didn't give me the bird, non-judgmental feedback on the braking where I was struggling. So that's what we want to do for our kids. And then just thinking about why feedback is important. Praise will keep you in the game, but it's feedback that makes you better. So we don't want to not have praise. That's important. And we want kids to feel engaged, motivated, supported, hopeful that they'll get there. But the feedback is the specific um, information that you give to kids that helps them reach the criteria for success that you've laid out. Um, Also, academic feedback is more strongly and consistently related to achievement than any other teaching behavior, any other. So, more than having a clear objective, more than um, engagement or motivation or any of those things. Those are all important, they all matter. But academic feedback is the most highly correlated to academic success. And it also, that's a consistent correlation. Doesn't matter what grade the student's in, their socioeconomic status, their race, any of that. Academic feedback still is the most good. Academic feedback is the most consistently aligned indicator of academic achievement. And that's many years of research that pans that out. So that's huge. It's like a magic bullet almost. Okay. So The most powerful single modification that enhances achievement is feedback. The simplest prescription for improving education must be dollops of feedback. So little pieces of feedback spread throughout. You have the tool. You know feedback is going to make a giant difference. So how can we do that in a way that's going to support kids and make them reach the criteria for success of whatever it is that you're having them do? Okay, so now let me get out of that. And I just want to also, I'm going to send this, oh, not chat, whoops. I'm going to send this article out to you as well because I think it's good. Um, Let me zoom in though. So this is an article on the secret of effective feedback by Dylan William. And it's only successful if students use it to improve their performance. So remember, over the years, we've talked about taught curriculum and learned curriculum. Well, I taught it, I taught this, but did they learn it? Feedback, it doesn't matter if you give the feedback if the student doesn't use it to improve their performance. So you have to close that feedback loop where you give the feedback and also see that they've made adjustments to their practice as a result. So you want to keep the purpose in mind. What's the point of the feedback? It's not an assessment, it's not an evaluation, it's to move the needle for kids towards achieving the criteria for success that you've put out. So he talks about here, why are we looking at student work? What's the purpose? Sometimes we just want to improve the existing work. And he gives the example of reading a PhD dissertation right before it goes to publication, noticing a typo. Well, you're not going to give that back to the PhD candidate and say, where do you see the error? You're going to just tell them, oh, there's a typo there, because the point of a dissertation is not spelling that word correctly. But most of the time, it is about not only looking at the work, but what it tells us about the students. So what does this error or this success tell us about what the student knows, understands, and is able to do? And so really the feedback is about changing the students' experiences rather than the work itself. Now, we don't want to write feedback in a way or give feedback in a way that personalizes it, because remember that non-judgmental thing. So it's still, you would say your turn and talk had this criteria or didn't have this criteria, but it's about the next time the student goes to do a turn and talk, that they know what to do, or they have the skills, they've given the feedback, received the feedback, and they know what to do next. Okay, so I'll send, this is a really good article out. I'll send that out as well. Okay, so now stop sharing there. If someone knows how to keep sharing between like screens without having to stop share, you should send me an email. That would be wonderful. Okay, so here we go. Now we're going to look at just some online tools. If you don't know Catlin Tucker, Dr. Catlin Tucker, she is an expert in blended learning. She's a high school teacher in California. I'm not sure if she's still teaching high school, but she was until very recently, if she's not anymore. And so she just published this book, Balance with Blended Learning. She's fantastic. Follow her on Twitter. But some of the tools that she offers are hosting real-time feedback sessions using Zoom, for example. So this might be where you have these 5-minute blocks with kids where you're in a breakout room with them and you're talking through the work on Google together and giving the feedback that way. Students can also give you feedback on their work, like what they've noticed about themselves in that, using that context as well. You can do video comments with Screencastify. She gives this tool Mote or Kazena. I've seen Mote. I haven't used the other at all, but it's a Chrome extension. It's free, and you can give audio feedback on work for kids. So I'll send this link out to you. There's more stuff in here, but you can take a look at it. So those are some tools. And then I wanted to show you this. This is Bill Ferreter. He wrote a book called Creating a Culture of Feedback. And see, he's quoting my boy Dylan William right there. Make feedback into detective work. So the way feedback is going to land, I think, the best is by putting the onus on students. So turning feedback into detective work, it's kids then have to do additional thinking based on the feedback you give. might be about their work, might be about the topic, it might be other things, thinking skills. So he gives an example here of making a student act like a detective. So there's a multiple choice quiz here, and he writes, "One of these questions is wrong, kiddo. Can you figure out which one it is?" And then the student responds with a comment. So rather than saying this one was wrong or this one was wrong or whatever, he pushes the student's thinking to find the one that's incorrect and potentially maybe not find it, but to make the child's thinking visible so that we know what's going on and we can better support and instruct. Um, this is another Dylan William quote. The first fundamental principle of effective classroom feedback is that feedback should be more work for the recipient than the donor. So if you're sitting at home on Sundays and you're writing notes, or you're typing comments, and I'm doing it too, it it should be more work for the students than you. And I say that, but then you have to give the time for students to take your feedback and do something with it. So it's adjusting sort of how we've been doing things all along, where we give feedback, you hand back the test, and then you move on to the next unit. You have to give the students time to be the detective so that their learning can actually, that loop can be closed. He gives another bunch of tools in here as well that might be useful for you. And then finally, this is not so much about feedback, but this is also a Catlin Tucker tool. It's a blended learning toolkit that I'll share with you. But I like this blended learning design checklist because I really think it helps us keep the focus on students and sort of best practices, which I know we're sick of hearing about best practices, but what's going to give us the best bang for our buck when we have this limited time with students and we're doing blended learning. So I'll share that with you as well. All right, so just a reminder, the purpose of feedback is about changing something in the student so that in the future they can do it better or more or enhance it. It's not personal, it's factual, and gives the student information on where or what they have to do to get to the criteria for success. All right. Thank you all very much for watching. And I don't have all the answers. I don't even have a slight majority of answers, but we keep doing this, and I'll keep sharing what I can find, and you keep sharing with me, and we'll get through it. But you're doing awesome work and I'm super grateful. So thank you. All right. See y'all soon.